Well, today, Stacey, we've come to Basing House, one of the flagship sites for the Trust. And we're going to take a walk from the car park where we've just arrived. We'll go under the railway alongside the river to look at the Great Barn and the things around there, before crossing over to look at the site of what was, take my word for it, once one of the finest of any Tudor houses in the country. So there's this Riverside Walk under the railway viaduct which leads us to the Great Barn and the visitor centre. I think it's one of the attractive features of the site that we're not far from the centre of Basingstoke, but it's a lovely natural setting.
Yes, definitely.
Up from the railway, of course, which, if I was someone living in old Basing 150 years ago, I think I would have not been too pleased that the London and South Western Railway was coming right across the top of my head. It's like building a motorway through the middle of a village today, I would have thought.
So these are the fish ponds behind us then?
Yes, that's right. We've walked alongside the river and running parallel with them the whole set of fish ponds. And of course these would have been extremely important for the house, providing one of their major sources of food.
Oh yeah.
But what we found when we excavated is that there are drains from the house up on the hill over in that direction there, and those drains are fed right down across the fields into the pond. So this great mass behind this great shadow behind us, it is the Great Barn, and it's the great survivor actually, because one of Basing's key episodes was at the English Civil War, when it was eventually smashed to smithereens by Oliver Cromwell, but the barn survived, and it is one of the most remarkable features of the site. And we'll go inside and have a look at it. Basing was taken on by William Paulet, and he was the one who turned what was a ruined castle into a fine house, and he needed a really good farm, a good estate, the Grange, to support that. And so building in what was really quite new material, brick, fired brick, and combining it with the craft of the carpenter, and they built this amazing estate barn. And this would be to take all the agricultural produce. And we know from the tree ring dating of the timbers they used that it was 1535, 1536 that it was raised. And it would have served its purpose for the estate for 100 years or so. And then when it came to the Civil War, 1642 onwards, it had a particular part to play because it was on the perimeter of the site, on the edge of the site. And perhaps its most stirring episode was in November 1643, because the parliamentarian forces who were attacking Royalist Basing, under their leader William Waller, the local MP, they came from across the river on that side there, and they attacked the site. And so for a time the defenders were here, using the barn as a stronghold, firing through the slots there. But the force was so great that they were driven out of the barn by the attackers, and they fled up the hill to the house where we're going to go later. When the Royalists realised they weren't being chased, and knowing what provisions they had here, they thought, well, we must try to get them back. And so that was when they fired their guns, a cannon from the top of the hill at the barn. The cannonballs came through the roof, bounced off some of the rafters. There's a scar up there, and then of course hit the wall, and that's why you've got the holes in the wall, which is where the cannonballs have bounced off.
Great.
But they also set fire to the farm buildings that surrounded the barn, and it was the intense heat and the roof falling in, which caused the parliamentarian forces to withdraw. The Royalists came back. Mercifully, the barn itself didn't catch fire, and they were able to take it back.
So Dave, do they ever hold events in the barn?
Well, yeah, actually, it's a very popular wedding venue.
Oh.
Because it's such a wonderful old building, and it's got such space.
Oh yeah.
And so I think they can have up to 10 wedding parties here in a year, and it's proved to be very popular. Well, this field here, Stacey, had a house built in it.
Okay.
Now completely gone, obviously, totally demolished. And it was a lodge built after the Civil War and after the Restoration, because at the end of the Civil War they took the lands away from the Paulet family, gave them to the Wallops, but after 1660 they got their land back. But Basing House was so badly treated that they didn't want to come back here to live, but did build what they called a convenient lodging, a hunting lodge, in this area here, a new build.
So what can you tell me about the dating of the house?
Well, we found a number of good clues. Some of the most exciting, I would say, that we actually found quite a lot of window leads. They're called cames, C-A-M-E-S, and they are the leads that surround the little diagonal diamond panes of glass. And from the mid 17th century on, they actually the people who made them started to put their initials and the date in the little runnel of lead, because it was made on a little hand mill. As they turned the mill, you could actually put that information in there.
Wow.
As they used them fairly soon after manufacture, the experts say they're better than coins for dating something. So the ones that were found here, there's quite a lot from 1677, so we think that's when the house was built. There are also some from 1693. And this, we knew about this site from an old enclosure map, but no one had seen the foundation, so we actually invited the time team to come in 1999 to have an excavation here, see if they could find that house. And sure enough, in the field just this side of where the flock of sheep are, the foundations of that house came to light. So we come up through Garrison Gate onto the site itself, and we're just about to cross a canal bridge, because after the Civil War, after Cromwell had taken Basing House, Parliament said that people could take away brick and stone and keep it for their pains. So in other words, they could just use it as a quarry, and they certainly did that. And that's why when we get to where the house was, we'll find that there's just ruins and foundations there rather than anything substantial. And it did mean that when the Basingstoke Canal was planned, they had no qualms about digging it right through the middle of the site. It just sort of came cutting right through. And so the canal itself is now a bit of archaeology, because it didn't last that long. It had to give way to the railway, which we've already seen, and was abandoned. But the bridge here survives as one relic of its passage through. This is one of the places to get a good idea of your bearings, Stacey. We call it the Bailey, and it overlooks the valley of the Loddon with the great barn to the north there, behind you. And it allows you to get your bearings on the site, because it all began with a Norman castle, the ringwork, constructed there, which survives as the great sort of ring of earthwork there. And we know that was built about 1150. They probably had an earlier castle down by a river crossing on a Roman road, about a mile away, and it was probably quite damp and not too good down there. So they within a generation or two, they'd moved up to this higher point. It was that medieval castle, which doesn't have a very spectacular history, but then in the 15th century, along comes this chap, William Paulet, and Paulet wasn't satisfied with what they call the old house, which he built within the confines of the Norman ringwork, but he actually then built a new house with 300 rooms alongside. And to get the scale of that, if you look at that cottage over there with the thatched roof,
Yeah.
that was on the far corner of the new house. This viewing platform allows us to appreciate the scale of the Norman ringwork. We're stood upon the top of the Norman defences, but it also allows us to appreciate the destruction that took place at the Civil War. They brought along a cannon royal, this massive gun that needed 40 or 50 horses to pull the gun carriage. Brought that up from Portsmouth, and they set it up over on that side of things, over near the church, and bombarded the east side of Basing House. And very soon they blew a breach in the walls of the new house on that side, and from there they came through, and the postern gate, which is down over there, can you see that brickwork in the middle of the bank there? That was a gateway through, joining the new and the old house, and we think that's where the final assault came through, and they overran the site. A lot of people had hidden in the cellars. There are cellars around the perimeter of the house here, and fire broke out, and a good number of them were trapped in the cellars, and they too perished as a result of that.
So Dave, this is the walled garden, I think.
Yes, we call it the walled garden, and you can see the very clear perimeter wall, although that hides some secrets, because although you can see lattice decoration on some bits which show it's original, and you can actually see some loopholes, which is where they made holes to fire their muskets through. There's one left, but if you're keen-eyed you can find 2 or 3 other examples as well. Some of it is replaced because there were 3 towers originally. Well, in fact there's another one around the corner, so 4 or 5 towers along it. There was one in the middle, but that we think was removed when the canal was dug, because the canal's very close on the other side of the wall. But the area it's enclosing is now an ornamental garden, but it was 1987 that was made, so that's a recent introduction. When we excavated before the garden went in, all we found was a little wall, a dwarf wall, surrounding a very flat area along this rectangle here. So we do wonder whether it was what you would call a tilt yard, or something for tournaments, games. And then the towers, the interval towers, would be the viewing platforms, and this would be the perfect area with the viewing platforms for you to entertain the royalty when you'd got them here and they were enjoying what Basing had to offer.
So we're inside the museum now, but what can you tell us about it?
Well, the museum just has a very good representation of the finds that come from the various periods of the site, particularly obviously the Tudor mansion, some of the fine work there. Quite a lot about the Civil War, because things like cannonballs and other things survive surprisingly well. And then there's also a feature of that hunting lodge, the mansion that was built on the other side of the road. So it's a really good sample, really, of the things that have been found here over what must be now 100 years of excavation, all told. As Lord Bolton had a really good look at the site in the late 19th century, and it's well displayed. But really, I think that what our little walk around today has shown is what an amazing site it is. And that there's no substitute, I think, for coming along and
definitely
having a look.
We've barely scratched the surface, really.
We've only scratched the surface, Stacey, you're right.